There is a special kind of crazy that lives in HOA neighborhoods, and one day it walked into my gas station and tried to get me arrested over a tank of gas. The president of our local HOA actually called 911 because I would not give her free gas. And 2 days later, the sheriff, the mayor, and half the town were standing in my parking lot, watching her lose the power she had been abusing for years, all because I told her very calmly, "You still have to pay." Before I dive in, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there, and if you have ever dealt with a wild HOA or an entitled neighbor who thinks rules are for everybody but them. Hit subscribe, because you are about to feel very, very seen. I am Evan Miller. I work mornings at a little place called High Ridge Fuel and Supply. We sit right on the edge of High Ridge Meadows, one of those perfect-looking HOA neighborhoods where the lawns match and the mailboxes are more regulated than actual crime. I have been behind that counter for years, listening to people rant about fines for Christmas lights, chalk drawings, garden hoses, you name it, and almost every violation letter is signed by the same name, Pamela Hale, HOA president. Up until all this, Pam was just a legend to me, a villain in other people's stories. I would hand them their coffee, shake my head, joke that at least she did not run the whole town, and go back to work thinking her drama would never land on my side of the street. You know what I mean. My coworker Riley likes to say she can smell HOA trouble. That Thursday morning she glanced toward the neighborhood and said, "Feels like a Pam day." I laughed it off, and 5 minutes later, a silver SUV came flying into our tiny lot, slid half across 2 disabled spaces, and parked like it owned the place. Out stepped Pam herself. Floral blouse, big sunglasses, that tight little expression of someone who is used to winning every argument. She did not look around. She just marched inside, dropped her purse on my counter like a gavel, and said, "Pump 4, full tank, charge it to the HOA." No. Hello. No, please. Just a command. I gave her the same polite smile I give teenagers trying to buy beer with a student ID, and said, "We don't have an HOA account, ma'am. Everyone pays first." Her head snapped back like I had slapped her with the word "no." "Do you know who I am?" she asked. "I'm the president of High Ridge Meadows," and I said, "I know who you are, and you still have to pay," before I turned the pump on behind her. I heard Riley cough into her sleeve to hide a laugh. Pam stared at me for a long second, then reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, flipped the camera on, and shoved it at me. "This is discrimination," she announced already. "Recording. I want everyone to see how this business treats HOA residents. He's denying us essential services." My face went hot, but my hand stayed flat on the counter, and I said, "Ma'am, I'm asking you to pay." That's all. She didn't answer. She spun on her heel and stormed out. And a moment later, we heard her voice through the glass. "Louder now, yes. This is an emergency. I'm being denied gas. He's refusing to serve our whole community. I want him arrested." Riley looked at me, eyes wide, and said, "Tell me she's not calling 911. And I just sighed and said, "Welcome to my Thursday." About 15 minutes later, a sheriff's SUV pulled in. Sheriff Ray Collins stepped out with the tired calm of a man who has seen every flavor of neighborhood drama. He talked to Pam first, while we watched from inside, as she pointed at the pumps. The store at me acting like she had uncovered some grand injustice. Then he came in and asked for my side, which took about 10 seconds. She wanted free gas, I said. She called 911. He rubbed his temples like it gave him a headache, went back out and asked her one simple question, did you pay for your gas? When she said, That's not the point. He told her it was exactly the point, reminded her this was a private business, that she could not demand free gas because she had a title, and that 911 was not a customer complaint line. He wrote her a citation right there while she sputtered and promised to take this to the board. Then he left, and she sped off like she was in an action movie. Riley turned to me and said, "Well, that was dramatic. Think we're done." And I wanted to believe it. But there was this knot under my ribs that would not move, and all I could say was, that felt like chapter 1. The next morning, I pulled into work, hoping the storm had passed. Instead, the first thing I saw was a poster board, taped crookedly to our front door, read glitter letters, screaming, "Boycott High, Ridge Fuel, Justice for HOA Residents." The glitter sparkled in the sun like it was mocking me. Inside, Riley handed me her phone. On the screen was a Facebook Live from the neighborhood entrance, Pam standing with a little crowd behind her, waving signs and yelling into a megaphone about how my station was hostile, how I had endangered their community by refusing service. The comments were flying, some people laughing at her, some cheering. A few saying they would never buy gas from us again. That was the first moment I felt scared, not of Pam, but of what she could do with her position and a camera. I don't own the station, but my paycheck keeps the lights on. And suddenly, I was not just the guy at the counter. I was that guy from the HOA video. People came in to stare. Some pretended to shop while filming me. Between aisles, one woman in yoga pants whispered, "So are you really refusing to serve homeowners?" And when I said no, I just charge everyone, she filmed that answer and left without buying anything. By mid-morning, I felt less like an employee and more like a defendant. That is when my district manager walked in. Rob corporate polo red-faced stack of emails. In his hand, he slapped them on the counter and said, "What is going on?" Evan. The Chamber of Commerce called HOA board members are emailing me. This station is all over town. Facebook, you fix this or I suspend you. I tried to explain free gas. 911, now the boycott, and he cut me off. I don't care who started it. I care that our name is in the middle of it. Make it stop, then he left. Like it was that easy. After he was gone, I sat on the little step behind the counter and realized my hands were shaking. Not because I thought Pam would walk in and hurt me, but because I had just watched one entitled person swing her weight around and almost knock my job over. Riley sat down next to me and said, "If she wants a war, maybe we stop playing defense." I asked what she meant, and she said, "We don't scream back. We just show the truth. We have cameras." There's a 911 transcript. She's spinning a story online. We put the facts together and hand them to someone who actually matters. I asked, "Like who?" And she said, "My cousin in the mayor's office for a start," and suddenly I felt a little less helpless. That night after closing, we pulled the security footage. There was Pam marching in, demanding the HOA tab. Me telling her we don't have one, her storming out to call 911. Riley's cousin helped us get the transcript, and when you lined everything up side by side, there was no way to make it look like anything except what it was: a woman using her title to try to bully free gas out of a cashier. We sent it all over to the city, and then we waited. The next day, Pam turned it up. More people, more signs. Some of them professionally printed, "Now stop. Business discrimination. Protect HOA rights." People brought lawn chairs and coolers. Kids sat on bikes at the corner like it was a show. And every time I looked out the window, I saw my job, sitting in the middle of that circus. Pam stood on the curb with her megaphone pointing at our building and yelling about targeted harassment and hostile treatment, and every car that slowed down to watch instead of pulling in to buy gas made my stomach drop a little further. Then I saw a sheriff's cruiser pull in again, followed by a black SUV with the city seal. Sheriff Collins climbed out, arms crossed, already looking tired, and Mayor Grant Lewis stepped out with that expression of a man who knows. His afternoon just got complicated. Pam practically ran to them. "Mayor?" "Sheriff, thank God you're here," she shouted. "This business is discriminating against homeowners. They humiliated me. They endangered our community. I demand justice." The mayor held up a hand and said, "Pam, why is half of High Ridge Meadows blocking the entrance to a gas station?" She launched into a speech, used words like harassment and oppression, painting herself as the victim of some cruel anti-HOA conspiracy. The crowd was quiet, phones up, waiting. And then he asked her the same question the sheriff had. "Pam, did you pay for your gas?" she said. It was not relevant that HOA residents support local business and should not have to pay up front, and he just looked at her and said, "It's very relevant, because what I'm seeing is someone who demanded free gas, called 911 when she didn't get it, and then organized a protest that's blocking a private business." Then he did something I did not expect. He started listing her greatest hits out loud, the fines over wreaths, the letters about kids' chalk drawings, the threats over wind chimes and garden hoses, even the time she tried to order around people who didn't live in the neighborhood. You could see faces in the crowd, change people nodding like, "Yeah, I remember that one." A few laughed. But it wasn't kind laughter. It was the kind that says, "I've been waiting for this." That is when one of the HOA board members, a quiet guy named Daniel I had seen 100 times at the pumps, stepped forward and said, "Mr. Mayor, the board never voted on any complaint against this business or on this protest. Pam acted on her own." And you could feel the air shift like someone had opened a window. She spun on him, accused him of undermining her. He said she had told them there was a serious safety incident, hinted there had been an explosion, and the sheriff actually laughed and said, "There was no explosion. There was a woman who didn't want to swipe her card." The crowd reacted to that, not just laughing now, but calling out their own stories. For bird feeders, Halloween decorations, leaving a garage door open too long, laughing too loud. On their own porch, years of frustration, finally all spilling out at once. Sheriff Collins raised his voice. "This is not an HOA meeting. This is a public lot," he said. "You can't block access to this business. You can't harass its employees. And no free gas is not a civil right." People laughed, but you could hear the relief in it, like someone had finally said the quiet part out loud. Then he turned to Pam and said, "Between yesterday's misuse of 911 and today's obstruction, I'm issuing you another citation." She went bright red and said, "He couldn't do this to the HOA president." And Daniel took a breath and said, "Not anymore. I'm calling for an emergency vote of no confidence in our president." And you could almost hear something snap as people started nodding, backing away from her instead of standing with her. Right there in my parking lot, in front of the sheriff, the mayor and half the town, the woman who had ruled that neighborhood with letters and fines watched her power evaporate. Her clipboard slipped out of her hands. Papers went everywhere. She muttered about suing everybody. Then stomped to her SUV, slammed the door, and sped away. One of her glossy protest signs peeled off the hood and slid across the asphalt like a little white flag. After that, the crowd broke up fast. Some neighbors came in to apologize. My boss had to come back and admit I had been right. A real county inspector checked the station and cleared us of every complaint Pam had filed. And a few days later, Daniel walked in wearing jeans instead of the HOA polo and told me the board had officially removed Pam as president. No appeal, they were auditing her use of HOA funds, and he handed me a formal written apology from the HOA, clearing my name and the station's name completely. I thought that would be the end of it. But one evening when the pumps were quiet and the sky was going orange, a beige sedan with a dented bumper rolled in slow and parked by the door. Pam got out. No sunglasses, no clipboard, no megaphone. Just a tired-looking woman in a plain sweater. She walked up to the counter, stared at the lottery machine for a second, like she was buying time, and then said, "I'm not here to fight Evan. I lost my position, my reputation. Maybe more. I spent so long needing to control everything that when I felt it slipping, I went after you. You didn't deserve that." She slid an envelope across the counter. Inside was a signed retraction of every complaint she had filed against me, and the Station County HOA, all of it. And then she said quietly, "You were the only person who told me no. Everyone else just let me be like that." And for the first time, I saw her not as the cartoon villain from all those stories, but as a person who had let a little bit of power rot her from the inside. She turned, walked back to her car, and drove away. No screeching tires this time, just a slow exit into a neighborhood she no longer controlled. And I stood there with the pumps humming and our flickering sign buzzing over my head, and realized this whole mess was never really about gas. It was about power. About what happens when nobody pushes back on someone who loves control more than they love their neighbors. And about how sometimes the only thing standing between a bully and an entire community is one regular person in a cheap uniform who finally decides, "Done." So now I want to ask you, have you ever dealt with an out-of-control HOA, a boss, a neighbor, anybody who thought their little bit of authority made them untouchable? Do you think someone like Pam deserves a second chance after she loses everything? Or is that just karma doing what it does? Tell me what you think in the comments. Share your own stories. And if you want more real HOA drama like this, hit like and subscribe, because trust me, there is a lot more where this came from.